Good morning, folks. Welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video. My name is Kevin, Kevin in all caps, youtube.com/at Kevin247. And I want to talk to you guys today a little bit about the housing market and mortgage interest rates, and actually something that we had considered a couple years ago when we were selling our home, and maybe even we'll consider moving forward when we purchase our next one. Please go ahead and smash that like button. Give this video a like. It really helps out the channel. It helps YouTube and the algorithm send this video to more people. And if you haven't subscribed, welcome all new viewers and subscribers, and welcome back returning. Good morning. Hope you guys are having a great day. Let's dive right into this story right here. Home buyers find alternatives to high interest rate mortgages. And it says here that the frenzy may be gone from the real estate market thanks to mortgage interest rates that have more than doubled in the last 2 years. But experts say Southern Nevada is still a seller's market. Now, I don't think that this information shared in this article is going to be 100% limited to just Southern Nevada, but we're going to dive right in and see what they have to say. I'll give you my thoughts and opinions based on my market and other parts of the country. And as always, feel free to chime in the comment section below with what you're seeing, what you know, and what you think about what's happening and likely to happen in the future. Now it says here, homeowners, some with mortgage rates as low as 3%, have been in a self-imposed lockdown of late, soured by the prospect of downsizing, upgrading, or making even a lateral move with a 30-year fixed mortgage rate at more than 7.5%. I can feel that pain. This was something that we had seriously considered and thought about when we were selling our home and moving to Florida, and realizing that any new purchase from that point on was going to be at a higher interest rate than we were getting out of, and a higher interest rate than we have ever experienced in our own personal lifetime. I think the highest we've ever paid on a mortgage was around 5%, and that was in 2014. Granted, at the time, the home was only $310,000, whereas the same home today, if I were to actually pull it up, let me pull it up here and tell you guys, where the hell was my address? How bad is it that I can't remember my address from just 2 years ago? Maybe 3 years ago, I can't remember. Yeah, so the same home that we purchased in 2014 for $310,500, I don't know if you guys can see that there, the same home that we purchased and then sold for let's see here, we sold it for $395,000 in 2020. That same home, granted, I said 5% roughly on the interest rate, would feel a whole lot different today buying it. And you guys can see that house right there. I'll put it up on the screen so you guys can see it. Buying that home today would literally make your teeth want to fall out at the current estimate of $560,900. Now, that is a huge change. That is a huge jump in home value. But when you factor in the higher interest rate at nearly 8%, that's a game changer, folks. That makes me not want to get involved in paying these unbelievably high interest rates. And also, if I were a seller, I would be very, very cautious and skeptical about walking away from a super low interest rate. But regardless, we'll carry on with this article and see what they have to say. It says that, but sellers, buyers, lenders, and even builders are engaging in creative ways to keep deals closing in Southern Nevada, albeit at a slower pace than in recent years. Now, this article here is actually similar to what Sarah emailed me last night. So thank you, Sarah, for sharing this article from Fox Business that says, with mortgage rates soaring, taking over existing mortgages is gaining steam. So this is what is referred to as assumable loans. And we talked about this and we considered it when we were selling, but I'll tell you guys a little bit later as to why that didn't actually pan out, and also why we didn't need it. So Las Vegas realtors report 2,374 existing single-family homes sold in September, and that's down 10% from the previous year. With 4,300 homes on the market, Southern Nevada has a little more than 2 months supply of inventory, according to the LVR, which is half the supply that it had last year. Prices are holding steady, with existing homes selling at a median price of $450,000 for pretty much all of the year, and that may be about to change. Quote, Homes are selling on average in 32 days, and this is according to the realtor Diane Varney. But I've seen 100 homes a week coming on the market recently, and if that trend continues, it will soften prices. The fourth quarter and first quarter are historically lower months for sales. Obviously. Varner says despite challenges, sellers still have the upper hand. We've handled an inventory of 8,000 homes, and if we get to 10,000, it will be a buyer's market, is what she says. Even at current rates and with our very tight housing supply, owning a home here in Southern Nevada is a better deal than renting for most people, especially when you consider that home ownership is still one of the best ways to build wealth and financial stability over time. And this is according to Lee Barrett, the president of the Las Vegas Realtors. Closing the deal may be a challenge, according to this article, and experts say, but options exist, from plunking down cash to the return of assumable mortgages. So at the time, we were considering all options to make our property stand out the most and be the most attractive in order to gain the most attention and ultimately the highest price of selling. Now, this is a separate house, not the one I just showed you. It was the home after that we sold in 2022. And yeah, 2022. And I also can't remember that address either. So we ended up selling that one in May of 2022. And this is the reason why we did all that we did, was to make sure that we could get the most for the sale of this property. And currently it is still up, even above, according to Zillow's estimate, it is up over what it sold for in May of 2022. So essentially what we were trying to do is make sure that we were the most accessible, okay, from all potential buyers, even those who could potentially face a higher interest rate. So we approached our lender and asked if we could, or if we had the ability of an assumable mortgage. And the answer that they gave us is an interesting answer, and quite possibly an answer that many others may receive if they're asking the question. At the end of the day, it didn't matter in our particular situation, and I'll tell you guys why in just a moment. But the article continues on to say that cash is king. The best option for avoiding high interest rates is paying cash. True. A strategy once employed primarily by equity-rich Californians, but Nevadans are getting in on the action. And I think a lot of these Nevadans are actually California transplants, Graham Stephan being one of them. Quote, people who would normally be considered a cash buyer have amassed decades of equity in their homes, end quote. And this is according to Varney, adding, she's closed cash transactions in less than a week. LVR reports just under 28% of transactions in September were cash sales, up about 2 percentage points from last year. And cash buying peaked in May of 2013 at nearly 60% of all transactions. But cash offers, which are almost always preferred by sellers, are typically not an option for first-time buyers and others who require financing. Now, first-time buyers paying cash is actually a growing trend, but the reason is not necessarily because they're sitting on a mountain of cash. It's quite possibly because they have some other investor willing to pay the cash and accept repayment at a lower interest rate than a bank or a mortgage lender would typically require. Homeowners, in regard to discounted rates, who are eager to sell are buying down interest rates to make the deal more palatable for buyers. It's a costly practice that can make a small dent in mortgage payments. Buying down a mortgage rate by 1.1% of the total loan amount can lower the interest rate between 1/8 and 1/4%, says Varney, and at that rate, it would cost the seller $15,000 to buy down the interest rate on a $500,000 loan from 7.25% to 7%. Lenders usually limit buydowns to a maximum of 0.75%, an amount determined by the type of loan and the buyer's credit and the size of the down payment. The option of buying new, whereas home builders who don't have the luxury of remaining on the sidelines waiting for interest rates to come down, they are circumventing the challenge of high mortgage rates by offering incentives and interest rates in the 5 to 6% range, usually on limited properties. Now, this is going to be dependent upon your location, because I do know that there are some parts of the country that are still on a lottery and wait list for potential buyers to even have an opportunity at new home sales. And it's still a seller's market in those areas. So buyers beware, you're not going to get builders discounting and offering incentives for you to buy their limited inventory. Odds are they're going to maintain that upper hand in that position by limiting their builds to limit the supply to further drive up the demand and keep the upper hand. Now, Varney says builders have purchased a product that allows them to offer low rates on some of their new homes, like outstanding inventory. But it's a limited amount of funding available for a limited time. Some big builders, such as D.R. Horton, have lending subsidiaries that originate mortgages for new home buyers. Builder-provided rate buydowns can be permanent or temporary, the latter resulting in a teaser rate that could increase and result in increased payments. Adjustable mortgages, balloon payments, things like that. And personally, I have a relationship with my mortgage broker, with my lender, and I would prefer to use them in any and all scenarios and situations. However, in the instance of trying to capitalize on these incentives offered by big builders like D.R. Horton, I would be limited in that ability, and I would have to go with their preferred lender. Now, as we move on here, we're getting into the assumable mortgage rules. And this is really important when as I then explain to you why we ultimately ended up selling our home the way that we did, and the answers that we got to the questions that we asked our lender about assumable mortgages. And it says that some lenders are resurrecting assumable mortgages, a popular feature during the 1980s, but rarely used in recent years as interest rates have fallen. Basically saying no one would want to assume a mortgage previously because the new interest rates were lower than what the seller currently had. So no one's looking to pay more. Everyone's looking to pay less. Assumable loans allow qualified buyers to take responsibility for the seller's mortgage, often at a lower cost than originating a new mortgage. Assumable mortgages are insured by the Federal Housing Authority, the FHA, the Veterans Administration, the VA, or the Rural Housing Services, RHS. Buyers who assume a mortgage will likely have to make up the remainder of the sale price with cash and or a second mortgage. So this is where things get a little tricky, because not all mortgages are FHA, VA, or RHS. Okay, so that's number one. Number two, the difference in the equity having to be made up by either a second mortgage or cash can really make the sale and transaction more challenging. And it says that by supporting this financing option, the FHA, the VA, and the RHS are creating an opportunity for buyers with low and moderate incomes to compete with cash buyers. But not all mortgages are assumable. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac loans, which make up 70% of mortgages, cannot be assumed. So essentially, as we asked the question to our lender, which was a private mortgage company, they informed us that no, our loan was not capable of being assumed. That was number one. We knew that, okay, moving forward. Number two, we also realized that if the potential buyer needed to assume a mortgage on a property that we were selling for $840 something thousand, which was over the maximum conforming loan amount, which has since increased. And let's see here, in March, the maximum amount for a conforming loan is now $726,200 in most counties. There are very few select counties that are actually above that, but $726,200, and the max conforming mortgage loan amount in 2022 was a whole lot different. $647,200. Might have actually been less at the time that we were selling. So we've seen a significant increase in the conforming loan amount, which is very, very helpful for buyers, because as you exceed the conforming loan amount, you then enter into jumbo loan territory. And with the price of homes going up, a lot of homes were then being classified as jumbo loans, which changed your application and approval process. It changed your underwriting. It changed the down payment. It changed your income, your debt to income ratio. It changed everything. Jumbo loans are not easy. They're not desirable. Okay. And so there's a reason why they're jumbo, and there's a reason why they're so much harder to get. The interest rates are higher, like everything about jumbo loans. Not great. Obviously, at the time, we were selling a home that was well above the conforming loan amount. So if the buyer didn't have the cash to come up with above the conforming loan amount, then they were going to be entered into the jumbo loan category, jumbo loan territory. So that was already a challenging obstacle. But then if you're thinking about it, well, if they need to assume our mortgage at the lower interest rate, and or we're factoring all these other challenges into the sale, we had a specific buyer in mind. this buyer was going to be all cash. And ultimately, what it boiled down to was, if you're trying to assume a mortgage at a lower interest rate, great. However, if the home, let's just say the purchase price of the home is $700,000, and you want to assume a mortgage and because the rate's a whole lot lower than it is today, but the outstanding loan balance on the mortgage is, let's just say $500,000. That means that as a buyer, you're going to have to come up with $200,000 to assume this mortgage. And that's either going to be through cash or through a second mortgage. So just putting that out there, just so that you guys are aware and understand how this process works. If the home that you're considering to purchase is even capable of having its mortgage assumed, as not all mortgages can be assumed, which is what we learned. In the end, we ended up selling our home to a buyer who was 100% all cash. And that is ideal, especially if you're above the conforming loan amount and or you don't have an assumable mortgage. So these are things to take into consideration and think about as we're moving forward here and the changes to the housing market and real estate and buying and selling. As always, I will keep you guys abreast of the latest and what we are doing and what we have decided and, what we see happening as we continue on this journey here, quite possibly renting for one more lease cycle before we buy. Because I feel much like I felt very confident about this when we sold back in 2022 and moved to Florida, was not only were we not 100% certain if we were going to stay in Florida, so there was no rush to buy, but I also felt like we were going to see better opportunities in regard to pricing and interest rates. And honestly, I think that right now, time is on our side. Therefore, renting for another 12 months or 18 months, whatever it may be, whichever is going to give us the best price, is going to allow us more time to see the change and see the shift. And much like we're seeing it in other markets and other industries, which I actually just recorded another video for a completely different channel. If you guys are interested in knowing about other parts of our economy that are changing, let me know and I will give you a link. I think we're going to see, much like we're seeing in Southern Nevada, we're going to see it transition to a buyer's market. We're going to see more inventory hitting the MLS. We're going to see more properties for sale. We're going to see an increase in inventory. We're going to see some sort of change in interest rates. We're going to see some incentive to get buyers buying again, sellers selling again. Like, you have to have both. Otherwise, we end up in this weird limbo situation where nobody wants to buy or no one can buy and no one wants to sell because they can't buy. Not to mention mortgage brokers and banks industries. Like, everybody is literally in a standstill right now, thanks to a lot of the monetary policy changes and interest rate hikes and influenced by the Fed. And this isn't going to last forever. I can guarantee it's not going to last forever. And I do think that moving forward, we're going to see an opportunity of increased discounts and lower prices and better interest rates and greater mortgage products and maybe even higher limits on conforming mortgage amounts, which would be great for us, because if we were to have bought last year, then we would have been in the 647,000 conforming loan range. Whereas today we would have been in the lower 700s, which would have been the difference of probably roughly $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 difference in cash that we would have had to pay to keep our mortgage from being a jumbo loan. Now, granted, the interest rates are higher, so then you have to do the math and decide, was it better to spend the $80,000 in cash last year than it would have been to wait to pay a higher interest rate to still have a normal conforming loan that wasn't a jumbo? That's the $1 million question. But the beauty of it is that most of the properties that we're looking at right now are within the $500,000 to $800,000 range. So odds are, if we wait till next year, more than likely we'll see the conforming maximum loan amount increase closer to $800,000. Maybe not 800, but maybe 750-ish. And that'll just make our purchasing that much easier to do without having to go to a jumbo loan. And we'll probably have more motivated sellers and quite possibly lower interest rates. I'm not saying 2s and 3s, but interest rates maybe in the high 6s, that could be doable. So for instance, let's just say 2024, we're going to buy a house, and this is my positive affirmation. This is my manifestation moment right here. So 2024, we're going to buy a home, and it's going to be under $800,000, and we're going to have a mortgage interest rate of 6%.